Hey there, Alex Kidman here with my quick video review of the Aspira F50, a super affordable feature phone primarily pitched to people who feel the need to upgrade from a 3G only phone to a 4G phone with the upcoming closing of 3G networks here in Australia. TPG Vodafone's already gone, Telstra will be gone fairly soon, and Optus after them, after which 3G only phones or phones that don't have 4G VoLTE capability will stop being able to take calls. And look, this is a feature phone, and I do have to treat these differently to how I test smartphones. Assessing them against smartphones is kind of pointless. Yes, I could say for the kind of money, and this is only a $99 phone, but for the kind of money you're spending on this, you could get yourself a pretty simple little Android smartphone, and that's true. I've even tested Aspira models that are like that in the past, but there are other competitors there, of course. But the reality here is that the market for these are people who want a phone, first and foremost. So probably the key thing you really want to know is, can it take and make phone calls? And the short answer is, yeah, look, it can. I've tested it here on the Telstra network, and it's done fine. Now, that's the Telstra network in Sydney, and the really big caveat I've got to put here is that mobile call quality is so much more dependent on the network and network conditions that you have at the time you are making and taking the call and the person on the other end than they are on the handset. But this does fine for that purpose. No particular great drama at all. Now, as you can see, because I've just opened it, it is a flip phone of the classic old style. This is the blue model. There's also a red variant if you prefer. This one does get little red highlights on the power button on the side there. Very simple indicators on the front, plus a single camera. I'll get to that shortly. And then we open it up to reveal a very small screen, just a screen, by the way, not a touch screen. I can tap that all I like, and all I'm leaving are fingerprints, because this just uses your classic old school 3-button, there's a rocker there, designed for calls, for accessing contacts, and then for accessing the very simple functions of this phone. It is designed to be simple. So contacts, call logs, tools, which comprises an SOS function. There is also an SOS button on the back, which I'll get to in a minute as well. Torchlight, alarm, calendar, calculator, timer, world clock, unit conversion, stopwatch, and pocket news. Multimedia, again, fairly limited. Camera, video camera, FM radio, audio playback, voice recorder, and video playback and images. Messages, your own files if you add them in there. Settings, games. Games is a misnomer here. It has one, Sokoban, the classic crate shifting game. Very simple stuff. I'll give you a quick look at that in just a minute. Internet, which is kind of entertaining in its own right, but not in a great way. You can, for example, surf the web, but surf is not quite the right word here, because you've got to do all of your URL input via predictive text kind of stuff. It's so slow. I'm actually sparing you that. This is my own site, and yeah, it doesn't render well. It's missing some of its charm there, I feel. I mean, I suppose it's technically functional, but it's not a pleasant or easy way to use the web. Again, I'm going to fall back on the line of, I don't think too much of the target market particularly cares. I should point out this phone has no Wi-Fi, so all you're going to get is internet over your 4G data connection if you've got a data SIM in there, and that's your lot. That's what it does. This is primarily designed to be a phone. And with that in mind, nice, big, friendly dialing buttons, reasonably easy to hit, some memory locations there, and a really simple little torch, which, yeah, I don't mind. I mean, it's not super bright, but obviously having it as a dedicated button is kind of handy. The UI is very simple, and everything runs fairly slow. But as I said, I think the core market for this are people who want to make and take calls, maybe a little bit of text messaging, although you are still limited, obviously, to good old T9 style, number button text entry, which honestly, I'm not a big fan. I'm so badly out of practice, and I didn't really even like it back when it was new, but it works okay. Around the back, there's the SOS button here as well. Nice little feature to have. So you do have to set this up, but if you press it for long enough, essentially speaking, it will call the first person on your SOS list, but also send a pre-written message to up to 5 people on that list. So again, with that target market, potentially speaking of older Australians in mind, nice thing to have, not unique to this, but still a nice feature to have for sure. And that's a good thing, because most of the rest of this phone is really terribly limited. Let's talk about a camera, for example. So We have a single camera here, and it's barely even a camera. I've got to be honest here. 2 megapixels, and the output is pretty ordinary at best. I'll throw up some examples here. It's not a good or satisfying experience. It's also not an easy experience to get into. So let's say you want to take a photo. Well, what you've got to do is you've got to go down to multimedia, you've got to go to camera, you've got to tell it you want the camera, you've got to wait for it to actually start up, and then, and only then, can you start capturing. Now, again, I don't think too many people who want this kind of phone particularly care, but it's worth noting this has a pretty awful camera. The rest of the functionality is kind of similar, really. I mean, if I go into the single game we have Sokoban, and look, I mean, it works, I can play it, but it absolutely is your very classic old school mobile game from about, what, 2002 maybe? Really simple stuff. I mean, Sokoban's a great little game, great little puzzler, if you like that style of thing, of course, but it's not, you know, it's hardly cutting edge. Again, I don't think the target market cares. That's fine. If you're after that kind of classic digital detox, then yeah, this will do that. I suspect, without wanting to stereotype too much, that the large proportion of the market for this phone are people who kind of want something to replace a landline phone. And that's where I can get onto the battery. So the battery on this one is interesting because it's a removable battery. Comes out the back here. Now, my own thumbnails are not particularly great, and this is a little tricky, so bear with me for just a second. No, that ain't happening. Bear with me for one more second. I'm going to use a handy-dandy tool to do this, but if you've got reasonable thumbnails, you could probably do it yourself. But the back is of your classic twist off of the back. Now, this is a little tough. Perhaps, because I'm trying to do this on camera, I'm perhaps making it look a little tougher than it actually is, or maybe I'm just not good at this. Answers on a postcard while I do this thrilling opening off a phone. But I suppose at least, again, with these removable phones, every once in a while, I'll get someone saying to me, hey, can you show me how to put the battery in? Where do I put the SIM card in? How do I get the back off? Well, I'm showing you right now. Gentle does it, though, because this is still a fairly lightly produced phone, like as in, and I'm really making a pig's breakfast of this. Sorry, folks. This is not a solid and robust phone, was the point I was just about to make. This is a fairly simple device. But there we go. That's actually got that moving. And there we have the back off. There we have the battery. So I've just removed the battery. Then you can also see the SIM card tray. We've got the SIM. Also supports microSD expansion, although not particularly high microSD expansion. If you did want to save a couple of simple files on there, yes, that would work. I'll pop the battery back in now. The battery is only 1,000 milliamps. That's really small by modern phone standards. It sort of doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as much. This will easily do a day, easily do a couple of days. I will say, because this is a feature phone, I can't put it through the same sets of tests I would normally put smartphones through, simply because, I can't run YouTube on it, for example. But if we power it up, it will eventually come up. There we go. But the reality for making and taking phone calls is, look, it's fine. It's very akin to the classic phones of old. So the battery can last. One of the nicer things, though, is this uses USB-C charging. So any USB-C charger really will charge this. It doesn't need much. But you also get a charging dock and does have a plug on the other end. And the real advantage with this, it's a little trickier, of course, again, to slide it into place. But there we go. That is charging. The camera probably won't like the exposure on that. The real advantage with this, of course, is you can then just sit that there and it becomes, like an old school wireless landline phone. I suspect a lot of people will use it that way. So should you buy the Aspira F50? Well, look, this is very much a phone for a target market. This is not a phone for everyone. It's maybe not even the best feature phone you can get out there, but let's face it, you don't have that many choices if you just want this simpler style of phone here in Australia. The vast majority of the phones on the market are smartphones, not this style anymore. It's suitable enough for the task. It's relatively inexpensive. And as long as you don't need the camera, as long as you don't need those other additional functions, then it's okay value, essentially speaking.